Welcome to this edition of the SKNIS Week in Review, where we take a look at the highlights of the government activities and programs that have taken place over the past week. In this program, we focus on the period September 8th to the 14th. Coming up, preliminary figures give insight into the financial impact of Hurricane Irma, non-communicable diseases, an area of concern for the Ministry of Health, and Department of Gender Affairs hosts two-day Entrepreneurship Workshop. These and more ahead. Thank you for joining. My name is Jacqueline Bryan. Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris gave an update on the extent of the damage caused in the Federation after Hurricane Irma passed through the Leeward Islands as a Category 5 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 185 miles per hour. The Federation was fortunate after the massive storm shifted away from its shores, unlike its neighbors that experienced extensive damage. Dr. Harris reported that he had received preliminary reports for St. Kitts and for Nevis, and that combined, the figures indicated that the financial impact of Hurricane Irma was in the region of 53.2 million EC dollars.
This estimate reflects damage mostly in the public sector, and we are still awaiting reports from the private sector. I should say the estimate is preliminary, that is, work is still continuing. But in the context of the high standard of accountability which we have established as a government, we thought that it was about the right time, nigh 1 week after, to give the country a clearer sense of the damage that we have experienced.
Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris. Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris, and his team Unity Government reached out to the private sector over the past week to organize the transport of relief supplies to the neighboring island of Saba. Saba, a 5-square-mile island with approximately 2,000 residents, was one of the Caribbean territories hit hard by Hurricane Irma on September 6th. Mr. Reginald Francis, owner of St. Kitts Marine Works Limited, was able to coordinate the humanitarian relief effort after being contacted by the Prime Minister. Mr. Francis said he contacted Mr. Vincent Perkins, who had a charter from Saba to St. Martin, and asked him to take cases of water to the island on his way down. Captain Vincent Perkins, who is the owner of Island Water Sports on the island of Nevis, offered 2 of his boats to transport the supplies to Saba that consisted of 3 pallets of water provided by the St. Kitts Bottling Company Limited. The St. Kitts Nevis Defence Force provided the trucks to transport the water from the factory to the pier and also the manpower to load and unload the trucks and boat. St. Kitts and Nevis's post-Hurricane Irma relief efforts were significantly boosted after the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, also referred to as the OECS, coordinated a regional response to assess the needs of the Twin Island Federation as well as the needs of the other islands affected. On Sunday, September 11th, Prime Minister of St. Lucia and OECS Chairman, the Honorable Alan Chastanet, along with Dominica's Prime Minister, the Honorable Roosevelt Skerritt, and the Director General of the OECS, Dr. Didacus Jules, visited St. Kitts and Nevis, where they carried out an assessment of the damages to the country and reaffirmed their solidarity with the government and people of the Federation during this difficult time. In addressing members of the media, St. Kitts and Nevis's Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris, commended his OECS colleague, Prime Minister Chastanet, for providing the necessary manpower from St. Lucia to help restore electricity and water to all parts of the country. Prime Minister Chastanet said similar visits were also being made to neighboring Anguilla, British Virgin Islands, and Antigua, as the OECS Secretariat felt it was critical for residents of the sub-region who were affected by these hurricanes to know that the organization stands ready to assist in any way possible.
Our role was simply to be able to be proactive and support SEDIMA in whatever role they were doing, and specifically to make sure that our brothers and sisters here in St. Kitts and Antigua and particularly the nationals of the OECS who reside in the British Virgin Islands, Anguilla, and in St. Martin, that they knew that they had a voice and that there were people who were concerned about them and who were taking their best interest at heart.
Prime Minister of St. Lucia and OECS Chairman, the Honorable Alan Chastanet. Nationals and residents from all walks of life gave thanks at a special church service on Tuesday, September 12th, for what many described as the sparing of St. Kitts and Nevis from the full destructive potential of Hurricane Irma, which killed over 30 people across the Caribbean and caused more than $10 billion in damages, according to disaster risk experts. His Excellency, the Governor General Sir Tapley Seaton, Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris, Deputy Prime Minister Honorable Sean Richards, and other members of the Cabinet joined with a number of individuals at the church service of prayer, praise, and thanksgiving that was held at the Wesley Methodist Church in St. Kitts. Meanwhile, a similar activity was held simultaneously at the Charlestown Methodist Church in Nevis. That service was attended by Premier of Nevis, Honorable Vance Amry, other members of the Nevis Island administration, and a wide cross-section of residents there. Reverend Mark Christmas, Chair of the St. Kitts Christian Council and Superintendent Minister of the Methodist Church, said he was pleased with the turnout and the service proceedings. Health officials in the Ministry of Health are urging residents to plan structured exercise programs as part of their daily routine as a way of living healthier lives. Chief Medical Officer in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Hazel Laws, suggested different types of exercises that persons could do to keep them in the best possible shape, especially as they became older. In addition to walking 3 or 4 times a week, she encouraged persons to include 1 or 2 days of weight exercises when structuring or planning their exercise program. Persons should also include flexibility exercises that allows them to stretch to maintain their full range of motion of their joints. Dr. Law cited several benefits to exercising regularly and having a healthy diet, such as reducing one's risk of major illnesses like non-communicable diseases, also known as NCDs.
So you have endurance or aerobic exercise, which includes walking, jogging, swimming, cycling. All right, it gets your heart beat up. It improves your heart functioning, your lung functioning. All right, so that's one type of exercise. You also have strengthening or resistance exercises. That's also important. It involves using weights. Yeah, very important. Because as we age, we automatically lose strength in our muscle fibers and we lose our muscle cells.
Chief Medical Officer in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Hazel Laws. The Department of Gender Affairs in St. Kitts hosted a 2-day entrepreneurship workshop for a group of 6 women detained at Her Majesty's Prison on September 13th and 14th. The workshop was an intensive training program aimed at aiding the women in developing business-related ideas and plans that would equip them with the necessary skills to start their own businesses upon their reintegration into society.
These workshops would be done in 2 phases. The department is dedicated to continue educating women in this country by engendering empowerment, fostering creativity, organizational skills, leadership abilities, and problem solving. Being here today means that you are taking the initiative to empower yourself, your community, your children.
Gender Field Officer in the Ministry of Gender Affairs, Chanel Charles. High Commissioner for St. Kitts and Nevis in Canada, Shirley Skerritt Andrew, visited southern Alberta recently on an ambassadorial tour where she met with business and provincial government leaders as part of efforts to expand networks across key Canadian provinces. The High Commissioner's tour is the result of a partnership with Embassy Connections Canada, a non-profit organization which fosters networks between Canadian government and business leaders and foreign representations. While there, the High Commissioner met with executives from major firms in the energy, construction, and agribusiness sectors. She also met with members of Parliament from the federal level as well as members of the Alberta Legislature. The High Commissioner acknowledged Canada's long-standing leadership role in the Caribbean and called for continued Canadian investment and cooperation in areas of priority in St. Kitts and Nevis, including collaborations in education, cultural exchanges, and, in general, people-to-people contact. At a ceremony on September 8th in London at the Embassy of Moldova, St. Kitts and Nevis and the Republic of Moldova officially signed a joint communique establishing diplomatic relations. The signing ceremony, formalizing diplomatic ties between the two countries, marked a noteworthy milestone for the Federation. The Embassy of Moldova's charge d'affaires praised the initiative of the Federation in establishing diplomatic relations as an important first step. He also expressed Moldova's willingness to explore ways in which the two countries can cooperate in the future at bilateral and multilateral levels. The 12 members of a National Tripartite Committee, or NTC, were given their instruments of appointment this past week. The additional 2 members, namely a chairperson and a secretary, were installed as ex officio members of the committee as mandated by law. The establishment of the committee is covered under an amendment to the Protection of Employment Act No. 12 of 2013. The NTC, in collaboration with the Ministry of Labour, will ensure the development of a culture of innovation, the use of initiative enhancement of the level of productivity in all sectors, and proper work ethics, and will also be responsible for the maintenance of industrial peace and harmony nationwide. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Labour, Ron Dublin-Collins, outlined the importance of such a committee.
The establishment of the National Tripartite Committee gives effect to government's commitment and policies of the Ministry of Labour with regard to facilitating tripartite engagement, dialogue, and consultation to promote consensus building and democratic involvement among key stakeholders on national development issues. With the National Tripartite Committee at work, the problems, challenges, and issues we pray that have existed for so long will be destined for reversal. The committee, through its deliberations, must ensure social justice. It is a fact that the well-being of all workers is a fundamental requisite of our national development.
Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Labour, Ron Dublin-Collins. And that concludes this week's Week in Review, produced by SKNIS. Remember to join us next time. Take care.